in a super high-stakes game that could decide the whole season. After coming back from being down by 20, New York barely survived a huge scare, but still came into Game 4 as the underdog. Indiana suffered a tough loss last game, but a win today would keep their home court edge. The Knicks definitely seemed more desperate out there, with Anunoby and Bridges scoring the first points fast, and Jalen Brunson attacking Nesmith's tough defense too. Of course, Indiana's crazy fast tempo was still on full display, and so far Nesmith didn't show any signs of being hurt before. Nesmith nailed 2 threes early and gave the Pacers the lead, and even though it was still early, they were outgunning New York. But with Josh Hart in, the Knicks started running the floor too, and Bridges made the most of a mismatch off the break. Haliburton, not wanting to be outdone, fired back with another 3, and Brunson immediately answered with one of his own. Suddenly, it turned into an ace vs ace shootout between Haliburton and Brunson.
5 consecutive shots, 5.5 in the first. 3, Brunson, bucket.
Well, you definitely predicted this one, no sprint.
From the first quarter on, it was a high-scoring treat for the fans. Both Haliburton and Brunson already had double digits, while Nesmith kept the Pacers hyped with a strong driving dunk.
Played the entire fourth quarter the other night, knocked away by Siakam on the deflection.
That number.
3-on-1, Haliburton to Toppin.
They kept pushing fast breaks off every defensive stop. So even though Brunson was doing his thing,
no question, I think he's looking over his shoulder, so to speak.
Haliburton with a 3 from way outside.
Whoa!
Haliburton was straight up on fire, even knocking down deep threes, and he already had 6 assists with some sick passes. The game was totally playing out the way Indiana wanted. Indiana dropped over 40 points just in the first quarter, and it didn't take much for them to take control. They were dominating fast breaks, 12-2, and their bench, led by Mathurin and McConnell, was stepping up. New York also used a surprisingly deep rotation, trying to hang in there against Indiana's energy. Towns, who was a hero last game, started showing up again. Coach Thibodeau's use of his bench was finally paying off, and the Knicks tied it up with solid offense and defense. That's something rare from a team that usually leans hard on starters. When Brunson sat, their defense actually looked sharper, and New York cleaned up their messy first quarter defense, though they looked shaky when Indiana's starters came back.
Brunson. Anunoby hard charging right to the hole. And a foul called, count it. Nembhard was in the way.
Anunoby was playing like part of a 1-2 punch tonight, and Brunson, after a long rest, came back and got an and one, showing the Knicks weren't backing down from a shootout. The Pacers stayed focused late and kept the lead, but this game was clearly going to be another banger. Then the second half started, and Indiana came out swinging. Mistakes against Indiana basically meant automatic fast break points, and Towns, who looked solid earlier, started fading a bit. Indiana's defense on Brunson was getting tighter and more physical. Then Miles Turner hit a corner 3 that pushed the lead to double digits. Just like that, the game shifted back toward the home team, but the desperate Knicks didn't let the gap grow any bigger, with Mitchell Robinson surprisingly sinking both free throws, and the Robinson-Towns big lineup finally started working.
Behind the back to Towns in the switch with Nesmith now defending.
Are they going to count? I think they are. I think it's got to count. He gathered.
With Towns getting an and one, the Knicks kept closing the gap. But while Towns was stepping up, Brunson looked kind of quiet, so New York couldn't quite catch up. Haliburton, who was cold in the second half, found his shot again, and Indiana kept clinging to a 2-possession lead. Haliburton even added a tough driving layup late in the quarter
to get to the rim.
Then stole the ball from Brunson on the very next play. Yeah, the momentum between those two flipped big time. At least New York kept drawing fouls and getting to the line, so even with Haliburton putting on a show, they stayed in it. But no one could stop Haliburton tonight. Benedict Mathurin kept the Pacers' bench production rolling, and the lead went back to double digits. Of course, it was Haliburton's insane playmaking at the center of it all. Meanwhile, the Knicks were stuck trying to climb out of a double-digit hole. At this point, both Brunson and Haliburton were resting on the bench. But the real difference? Indiana had a solid second option. With Siakam taking over, the Pacers extended the lead. If the gap grew any more, New York would be in big trouble. Then Anunoby hit a clutch three right when they needed it most. Even though they were down 15, there was still time for New York, but poor foul control started dragging the Knicks down. Towns was still doing his usual, picking up dumb fouls, and Josh Hart wasn't really contributing much either. Though to be fair, Indiana's players looked gassed too, so yeah, the game still wasn't over yet. Haliburton hit the 30-point mark, but New York kept chasing with everything they had. Then Siakam hit a big three to break New York's rhythm, and Bridges finally got going, knocking down a huge three too. With 3 minutes left, the gap was down to just 6, which meant it was still anyone's game. Then Nesmith drew an offensive foul on Anunoby, momentarily stopping New York's momentum, or so it seemed.
Cross court, on top, Nesmith into Anunoby, the collision into Towns. And Towns hurt that knee again. He hit it earlier.
But then New York forced a turnover right back. It was first called a shooting foul, but they overturned it with a coach's challenge. On that play, Towns took a nasty shot to the knee, and he looked like he was in serious pain. Still, he stayed in and played through it somehow. Then Bridges missed back-to-back shots, which really hurt the Knicks. While Indiana kept extending their lead with clutch free throws, Bridges even bricked a wide-open shot that could have helped. Meanwhile, Haliburton casually locked in a triple-double, and with Brunson basically disappearing in crunch time, the Knicks lost the last bit of fire they had left.
Goes on top, it's Toppin for three. Good!
That'll do it.
Then Toppin hit the dagger, 3 off a Haliburton assist. Indiana held strong and took the win, putting themselves in a great spot to make the finals. Brunson really struggled under the Pacers' pressure defense, and even though they kept it close, they never flipped the lead. Now they're facing a real threat of their season ending. By the way, Haliburton's game tonight was next level. He finished with 32 points, 11 boards, and 15 assists, and somehow not a single turnover. Only the second time ever in playoff history that's happened. At this point, calling Haliburton overrated sounds ridiculous, and honestly, we might be watching the rise of an all-time great point guard.
Brunson is, not Haliburton. He's not there yet. Haliburton is not overrated. He can play, and he can close, but he's not a superstar. Haliburton isn't asked to do as much to carry their offense as Jalen Brunson does for the New York Knicks.